The National Firearms Act of 1934, simply put, placed a $200 tax on the purchase of a machine gun, short barrel rifles, sawed off shotguns, as well as suppressors. It also mandated the registration of these items. The late 1920s and early 1930s were an interesting time in American history. Fresh out of the war to end all wars, American politicians decided that these young men who saw horrendous acts of violence and fought hard to preserve the United States Constitution and the American way of life were no longer responsible enough, along with all other American adults, to consume alcoholic beverages. These lovely political leaders saw fit to amend our Constitution and, with the 18th Amendment, banned the sale and consumption of alcohol in the United States. This would end up leading to skyrocketing crime committed by gangs and bootleggers alike who found a lucrative business in providing adults with an alcoholic drink. The Prohibition years would see a rise in organized crime and the heavy use of the newly designed Thompson submachine guns, both by criminals and law enforcement. In fact, it was the United States Postal Inspectors who were the first federal agency to purchase and use Thompson submachine guns. After seeing the postal inspectors with the new submachine guns, organizations like the FBI would follow suit. That's right, the mailman had Thompsons before the FBI did. Seriously, don't fuck with the mailman. Then again, it does kind of make sense. I mean, Northrop Grumman, the same people who designed the A-10 Warthog, also designed the mail trucks. So, be nice to your mail carrier. Notorious gangsters like Al Capone also heavily used the Thompsons and helped give it its nickname, the Chicago Typewriter. So, with murder rates on the rise and high-profile incidents like the Valentine's Day Massacre highlighting firearms like the Thompson in a negative light, newly elected President Roosevelt was compelled to act. Roosevelt, along with the National Rifle Association, drafted an early version of House Bill H.R. 9741 that sought to heavily regulate firearms. The original bill had most firearms classified under the National Firearms Act, subject to the $200 tax stamp and with a mandatory registration requirement. The only firearms not covered would be rifles and shotguns with a barrel length of 18 inches or greater. The NRA did originally object to a provision of the bill that would regulate pistols and revolvers the same as machine guns. However, they did sell gun owners out on everything else and fully supported the bill in the form we know it today. Even in the official transcript from Congress, it is stated that the NRA approves of the bill. And with that, H.R. 9741 would be passed. Originally proposed on May 23, 1934, it would be passed and signed by President Roosevelt less than a month later on June 18, 1934. Now known as the National Firearms Act of 1934, it regulates machine guns, short barrel rifles, sawed-off shotguns, suppressors, with a $200 tax stamp and mandatory registration. The bill, however, doesn't ban any weapons and doesn't actually address the issues with organized crime. This really only affects law-abiding citizens, because criminals don't care about the law, and either way, murdering your rival gang members is still illegal regardless of the method. We still pay that $200 tax stamp today, and for some, it may be cost prohibitive, but $200 in today's currency certainly doesn't have the same spending power now as it did back in the 1930s, especially considering how bad inflation has gotten. Also remember, this was the Great Depression. Median household income had dropped significantly. People were only making around $1,400 a year on average, or about $25,000 in today's money. So a $200 tax stamp was kind of expensive. Adjusted for inflation, $200 in 1934 is the rough equivalent of $4,700 today. I would hazard a guess not many would be able to afford to drop that kind of cash on something like a Thompson submachine gun, which also cost around $200 in 1934. Law-abiding Americans were not about to spend almost a third of their annual income to legally obtain a single item. It affected them so much that records show that after the NFA went into effect in August of 1934, nobody purchased any NFA firearms or suppressors for the rest of the year. Now, the NFA was just the beginning of the federal government's attempts to take firearms away from law-abiding citizens, with several notable bills passing, such as the Federal Firearms Act of 1938, the Gun Control Act of 1968, the Firearms Owners Protection Act of 1986, the Brady Act, and the 1994 Assault Weapons Ban. We will be covering those in future videos. I had a ton of fun making this video and I learned a ton. I hope you did as well. Leave me any questions down below in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.